Hello there. Let's discuss the question and answers from the chapter The Fish, which is included in your textbook Readings on Life and Nature. First, we will discuss the short answer questions. When you open your textbook at page number 19, you can see the 12 short answer questions. The comprehension questions, the first one is, how did the poet hold the fish she caught? Answer. The poet Elizabeth Bishop caught a tremendous fish in a rented boat. She held him beside the boat, half out of water, with a hook fast in a corner of its mouth. The second question is, why didn't the fish fight to get away from the poet? The answer, the fish the poet Elizabeth Bishop caught was an old one who had fought many battles in his life. It was so tired with old age and had marks of wounds here and there on its body. Third question. Describe how the fish hangs from the poet's rod. Answer. The poet Elizabeth Bishop says there, the fish hung like a grunting weight, that means a big weight. It looked injured and ugly, showing the signs of all the battles he had fought so far. Now moving on to the fourth question, that is, explain terrible oxygen. Answer. Here the phrase terrible oxygen has two meanings. On the one level, it means the difficulty of taking in the polluted oxygen in the sea. On the other level, it indicates the old age of the fish who finds it difficult to breathe in. Now the fifth question, that is, how does the poet describe the fish skin? Answer. The poet describes the brown skin of the fish as looking like ancient wallpaper. She says there, the pattern on the fish's body looks like ancient wallpaper, torn and worn with age. Now the sixth question, that is, why does the poet look into the eyes of the fish? Answer. The poet looks into the eyes of the fish because she could see that its eyes were bigger than her eyes. The indirect suggestion here is that the eyes of nature are always wide, but man has only a short-sighted view to give at nature with his greedy eyes. Now the seventh question, that is, does the poet admire the fish? Why? Answer. Yes, the poetess does admire the fish even from the very beginning of the poem itself, where she feels the fish is vulnerable. Though through an ambivalence of emotions, she finally comes to completely admire the fish, which is a symbol of untamable spirit. Now moving on to the eighth question, that is, name the things that hang from the lips of the fish. Answer. From the lips of the fish hung 5 old pieces of fish line. A wire leader was attached to one of those lines and a swivel too. Now the ninth question, that is, what does the poet see in the eyes of the fish? Answer. When the poet carefully watches the eyes of the fish, she could detect a piece of stained aluminum sheet pierced into its eyes. As such, she could clearly see the fish's irises and all the scratched icing glass. Now the 10th question. How does the poet describe the entrails of the fish? Answer. The poet describes the entrails of the fish as shiny with a dramatic reds and blacks. The poet says there, its pink swim bladder looks like a big peony. Now moving on to the 11th question. Explain, victory filled up the little rented boat. Answer. Here, a dramatic change of heart happens to the poet and she starts to anthropomorphize her catch. The speaker transforms herself into a triumphant but merciful hero who achieves a heart to see what a cruel deed she has done. Now the last question, that is the 12th question. Explain the line, rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. The last lines of the poem, the fish indicates Noah's story. Rainbow here symbolizes victory. Here she has attained a broader perspective through such an experience that it becomes her victory at the end. Next we will discuss the essay questions. As I usually do, I have included 4 paragraph questions answers within the essay itself, and the rest of the 2 paragraphs will be dealt after we discuss the essay. So the essay questions from the textbook, there you can see in page number 20. In page number 20 there are 3 essay questions. The first one is, Elizabeth Bishop's carefully judged use of language aids the reader to uncover the intensity of feeling in her poetry. Explain with reference to the poem, The Fish. The second question is, in the poem, The Fish, the poet describes all the fish hooks on the lip of the fish as medals of honor. They represent the tough spirit of the fish that has successfully escaped death. Comment on the fish's hardy nature and strength as perceived in the poem. The third question is, the poem, The Fish, presents the resilience of nature in the figure of the vulnerable fish that evades death. Discuss the significance of this idea with regard to human relationships. What lessons we learn from the fish? Now you note the ideas. The second paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 6 from the textbook. The third paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 2 from the textbook. The fourth paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question numbers 1 and 3 from the textbook. Now let's move on to the introduction paragraph of the essay. Survival is the ability to swim in strange water. The definition of survival is simply the fact of remaining alive or in existence, especially after facing life-threatening danger. The fish in Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Fish, is, in this sense, really a true survivor, and it becomes an ultimate symbol of struggling nature. Through the poem, Elizabeth Bishop displays her ecological awareness that leads her to accept a relationship of coexistence between human beings and non-human beings. This ecological awareness in the poem is reflected when she leaves the fish free. The poem is about the beauty in struggle, in pain, even in danger. It is a narrative monologue composed of 76 free verse lines. The poem is constructed as one long stanza. Now we will move on to the second paragraph of the essay. As I said, the second paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 6 from the textbook. There you can see on page number 20. That question is, comment on the central theme of the poem. So the answer is, art is built upon the deepest themes of human meanings: beauty and ugliness, love and hate, life and death. Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Fish, intermingles a variety of themes, including corresponding choices, man and the natural world, power and humility, learning to experience, appearance versus reality, etc. The Fish is a first-person narrative poem based on an incident that took place in Florida, where Elizabeth Bishop lived for 4 years. The poem is about a fishing trip, and it describes how the poet got a tremendous fish and held it beside the boat without hauling it in. The fish becomes a symbol of endurance, victory, and survival in the battle of life. The poem contains three significant themes: the integration of subjective and objective observation, an almost feminist definition of victory, and the active involvement of the reader in the experience recreated in the poem. These themes also appear in much of Elizabeth Bishop's other works. Bishop felt strongly that to discover the truth or reality of anything, one must become self-forgetful, totally caught up in the apprehension of what one is concentrating on. She illustrates this poetic tenet in many of her poems, like The Fish, which is essentially a lyric meditation. The poem begins with the lines, "I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat half out of water with my hook fast in a corner of his mouth." The poem is the combination of the poet's close objective examination of the fish and her richly speculative subjective interpretation from what she sees that enable to grasp intuitively the qualities inherent in the fish she has caught. For a brief but intense moment, she is at one with nature as represented by the fish and at one with the values he embodies. The poem touches upon a way in which we, as humans, impose ourselves upon nature to the point where we are unable to imagine nature as a separate thing. The closest symbol of the way humans have embodied themselves in nature is in the fish hooks literally embodied within the mouth of the captured fish, which have drawn firmly in his mouth and are part of him. Humans have damaged this animal through their interaction with him, and he has been forced to grow around those invasions. Bishop was a keen observer of birds and animals for whom she had great compassion. Her abiding passion for animal world is evident in The Fish. Towards the end, the author shifts the mood to a symbolic realm rather than the before physical environment. Victory is about the awareness of the brotherhood with nature and ecology, not of catching a big fish. Now we will move on to the third paragraph of the essay. As I said, the third paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 2 included in the textbook that you can see in page number 19. So paragraph question number 2 is, write a note on the poet's attitude towards the fish at the beginning of the poem. How does it change as the poem progresses? The answer is, attitude determines altitude is what really happens to the characters in Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Fish. The poem shifts in subtle fashion from the initial pride of the fisherwoman hooking a tremendous fish on into intense observation and admiration of the catch before finally concluding with an epiphany of sorts as the fisherwoman lets the fish go. Written in an intimate first-person style, the reader is taken directly into the action from the first line with eye caught. As the poem progresses, the speaker's identification grows and develops. The hunter, the fisherwoman, gradually comes to change her way of thinking as she focuses in on the fish. The battle-hardened fish, its vulnerable status, confirmed as the speaker begins to anthropomorphize or catch. The poem begins with the speaker's declaration of achievement, specifying that the fish caught was a tremendous one. She then wiggles, holding it half out of water, signifying that there is still a certain distance to be bridged between them, but one that is coupled with an already eager nearness from having held him. At the end of the speaker's recollection of horror is the point where the fish and the speaker connect as beings who are now strangers to suffering. She looks into the fish's eyes, and in a moment of quiet epiphany, everything becomes visible again. She begins to look at the fish with a renewed admiration, even an almost spiritual sense of attention, as she notices the 5 hooks still attached to its mouth. She sings, like medals with the ribbons frayed and wavering, a 5-haired bear of wisdom. This fish, she realizes, has survived 5 brushes with death. By the end of the poem, the victory fills up the little rented boat. It is the victory of both the fisherwoman and the fish itself. The animal stops being a mere trophy. It is imbued with human qualities which the fisherwoman can identify with. As a result, she feels she cannot do anything but let it go. The poem obviously celebrates a moment in a person's life when his or her humanness goes as far as to recognize the humanity of nature itself, to consider nature not as object but as equally subject. The life of the fish, she believes, is far more important than her victory. The poem relies upon a Wordsworthian spiritual exercise to justify a robot transformation from planter to benefactor. The increasing shift in the narrator's perspective and focus is really noticeable. Now we will move on to the next paragraph, that is the 4th paragraph of the essay. So the 4th paragraph is the answer of paragraph question number 1 and 3 from the text. So paragraph question number 1 is, why does the poet let the fish go in the end? And paragraph question number 3 is, what is the significance of the repetition of the word rainbow? The answer is, satisfaction lies in the effort, not in the attainment. Full effort is full victory. Mahatma Gandhi said once. The poem The Fish showcases the rich internal journey of the speaker, Elizabeth Bishop, a journey taken without ever leaving her physical location. The fish has long since stopped struggling, but the respected fisherwoman has for it, with all its marks of pain and struggle and survival, leaves her to let it go and keep on living. The imagery is both grotesque and beautiful, both ugly and fascinating. The beauty in things we find hard, painful, and unappealing. But he has already been through so much and fought so hard to keep himself alive. Throw it back. But while others failed to catch this fish, she has attained victory. The fisher gets help in making her decision when she sees the growing oil rainbow. The rainbow is symbolic of the rainbow that God put in the sky after Noah's ark reached safety and the animals and people on board were saved. Perhaps this Elderly fisher hopes that if she shows mercy towards this fish, she too will be shown mercy. The poem moves towards its conclusion when the speaker lets the fish go, mirroring the same state of arrest in the beginning when she caught the fish. As she stared and stared, the image of a rainbow first materializes on an oil leak, leading her to form further perceptions of joy in what little space she occupies in her boat. Everything worn down and ordinary seems to come to life right before her until her spirit rises above all material confinement. Everything was rainbow, 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 and I let the fish go. While there is an actual rainbow and a spilled oil around the engine and the bottom of the boat, the rainbow in this line is more about the figurative or symbolic nature of a rainbow. This ugly brown trout did not all of a sudden regain its coloring. Instead, it is an image seen by the narrator of what this fish is on the inside. And the symbolism of promise and hope and beauty are all realized in that image of a rainbow. The feeling of admiration of and reconciliation with nature has become so strong that everything around the narrator indeed becomes nature, and there, after having recognized the humanness in nature, the fisherwoman now recognizes her belonging to nature inside her own humanness. It is then that she lets the fish go. She arrives at a state of pure elation. After getting a glimpse into the fish's life, the poem ends when the fisherwoman lets the fish go. The reason the fisherwoman lets the fish go can be for several reasons. Most likely, the fisherwoman felt that it was an honor to catch the fish, and it would be dishonorable to keep a fish that the fisherwoman sees as a fellow warrior in the rough waters. Now we will add a small conclusion to the essay. So the concluding paragraph is, in the poem The Fish, Elizabeth Bishop highlights in many ways the beauty that poems exhibit in literature. On a fundamental level, this poem is a twist on the classic fish story. It is both repulsive and beautiful, powerful and powerless, terrifying and terrified. It embodies nature in that it is mysterious and it functions as the basis for imaginative reverie. It is ancient and alive, and it causes the reader to contemplate nature deeply and to scrutinize it closely, just as the speaker does. Life is not a place of perfection. We can always succeed, but not without falling first. It is a fight for survival. The poem teaches us that life is a battle, life is an understanding, and life is growing up. So we have finished the essay, and also we have included 4 paragraph questions within the essay. Now the remaining paragraph questions, 2 paragraph questions remain yet to be discussed. So the next paragraph question is, explain how the poet visualizes the entrails of the fish. Answer. One particular sin evident in our world today is greed. In this modern world, people give more importance to things they love and utilize more than human lives. In Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Fish, we see a fisherwoman who voraciously watches a fish and imagines what all ways she could utilize it after cutting its part. It is after her outside observation of the fish finishes, she takes an interest to understand how its inside will be once cut off. Here, The first person speaker shifts from I caught to I thought. The poet writes, I thought of the cow's white flesh packed in like feathers, the big bones and the little bones, the dramatic reds and blacks of its tiny entrails. Previously, she has described its gills as frightening and moving as though terrifying themselves. There is also the description of the blood as a result of the hook in the fish's mouth. In the next 7 lines, the sight of the blood inspires the speaker to consider the inside of the fish. From past experience catching, killing and eating these animals, she knows that the white flesh is packed in like feathers. She says that its feather-like white flesh would be very coarse. With this simile in mind, she continues on to describe the different size bones and the dramatic, contrasting and evocative colors and shapes one would see inside the fish's body. There is another simile which relates back to the roses of the wallpaper. This time, the swim bladder is like a big peony flower. The swim bladder is a gas-filled sac present inside the fish to help control the floating power on the water. Here the description of dramatic reds and blacks has symbolic connotations. Here the red symbolizes life blood and the black symbolizes the condition of the fish, old and tired, floating towards death. And in this sense, the fish really is in between the reds and blacks, between life and death. The narrator's imaginative description of the animal's entrails is one imbued with aestheticism. The animal's inside are colorful. Its flesh is compared to feathers. The line expresses how man always loves to perceive nature, not as a fellow being, but as a commodity for his use. For Bishop, nature mastered as static knowledge is a fish out of water. Its beauty and vulnerability belong to time. Next, we will move on to the last paragraph question, that is, write a note on the adjectives, similes, and metaphors used to describe the fish. What does it convey about the poet's feelings towards the fish? The answer is, the energy of poetry comes primarily from the reanimation and reactivation of the language that we recognize and know. Poems exist to create a space for the possibilities of language as material. Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Fish, is suffused with adjectives, metaphors, similes, rhetorical devices, and images that appeal to the senses. This transforms the seemingly ordinary poem into a reflection on human existence. Similes occur and help intensify the imagery. So the skin of the fish hung in strips like ancient wallpaper, together with the coarse white flesh packed in like feathers. The diction is varied and textured, from powerful adjectives used to describe the fish, battered, frightening, tarnished, sullen, etching to the relatively obscure entrails, guts, internal organs, and isinglass, that is a substance obtained from dried swim bladders. These nautical names, along with the names used to define the actual physical fish, bring authenticity to the idea that this is very much the world of fishing. In lines 8 and 9, Bishop uses 3 adjectives to describe the fish. It is battered, venerable, and homely. At first, these 3 words seem to cancel one another out, but that is not the case at all. To the use of the word battered, Bishop speaker is acknowledging the fact that This is not the first time the fish has been caught. This one stanza poem stretches down the page and is full of vivid imagery and figurative language. The poet going deep into the act of capture and coming up with a wonderfully evocative end. The poem is written in free verse. It relays a narrative about the person's remarkable yet ordinary fishing experience. Known for her incredible ability to balance conflicting concepts in her poetry, Elizabeth Bishop makes these concepts figure into all 76 lines of a speaker's encounter with a fish. She uses vividness with subtlety, objectivity with compassion, dareness with stern scrutiny. Another poetic technique Bishop makes use of is simile. There are a few examples, such as in line 28, when a speaker describes the flesh of the fish as packed with like feathers. The syntax is skillfully crafted, the imagery vivid, and not the use of the occasional dash, which causes the reader to pause, as if the speaker is interrupting their own thought process. Internal slant rhyme and assonance help keep the line interesting and musical. Not caught, water, fought, and a brown, blonde, and a bagged, packed, scragged, and a grim, firmly crimped, and so on. Thus, throughout the poem, Elizabeth Bishop uses great imagery to help create a vivid image in the reader's mind. Now we have discussed all the question and answers from the chapter The Fish by Elizabeth Bishop. In the next class, we will meet again with a new chapter.